This time on TNO, we're taking a look at the Jeep Wrangler JK Sahara Unlimited. Here's what it looks like while it's still clean. Now that we're done with that. So this time we're going to take a look at what you need to get back into the bush, back into the wilderness, and get to those spots that you really can't get to unless you have a piece of equipment capable of getting you there. Now, I'm not saying that you necessarily need a Jeep to do this, but you sure aren't going to find most of the really truly amazing spots in your Prius. Now, my first impression is that Jeep has gone a long way in the last 5 to 10 years with refining their product. I've been in older Jeeps and by far was not impressed. They were almost like a bush buggy on a farm. These have been refined to the point where they're relatively decent driving on, well, gravel as this is here, or even when you get onto pavement. Now, don't get me wrong, just by the general engineering of suspension, to get something that allows you to off-road, you can't have the best of both worlds. Something has to give somewhere. But compared to the Jeeps of yesterday, these are definitely leaps and bounds ahead of what they used to be. Now, with my longest single seating behind the wheel being about 6 hours, shared 60% on pavement, 40% on unmaintained gravel roads, the first thing that really jumped out at me is the lack of body roll. They've got this under control compared to, well, most, let's say, trucks, half-ton trucks, and especially older Jeeps. It's a very stable, secure ride. You really have a lot of confidence when you're driving it. And it handles more like a crossover, to be honest with you. Now, when you start looking at four-wheel drives and all-wheel drives, there is a higher level of fuel consumption compared to a two-wheel drive vehicle. Now, these are rated for 18 miles per gallon on the highway, and they get about that. And their city rating is about 17, but my city driving in this was 50-50 off-road and using 4x4. I got approximately 14-15 miles per gallon, which is more or less to be expected. Now, these are attractive from the outside, and they do have, as you can see, a fair bit of ground clearance for a factory vehicle running 265/70/18 tires. What you do lose out of this ground clearance, I think through engineering, is that when you're sitting in the driver's seat, it does feel kind of cramped because of the angle your legs are on, especially if you're used to driving a full-size truck. Alright, well, let's take a look at why you really buy a Jeep. Off-road, these things do impress me. It rides, and the way the suspension eats these bumps is actually far better than my 3/4 ton. You can actually feel the wheels staying in contact with the ground, whereas a 3/4 ton Chev would actually just sort of bounce and hop over it, which gives you a feeling of instability. Well, it is instability because when your wheels aren't in contact with the ground, you don't have control, and that's not a good thing to have. Not only do these Jeeps maintain good traction under low speeds, they actually keep it up to about 55-60 kilometers an hour. It's basically the speeds I was topping off at on these trails. Well, these trails aren't super difficult or technical in any way, shape, or form. It does give you a good feel for what they can do. The 4x4 controls on this are straightforward and a stick on the floor. You can shift on the fly unless you're going into your low range, at which point you have to basically bring it to a crawl and go into neutral and then make your shift to low range. The traction control on this is decent if you're one that likes traction control. I don't recommend it for off-roading, but sometimes on the street it has a place. It doesn't let you spin up the tires. It literally kicks in as soon as it starts feeling a slippage. My terrain, for instance, it, with the traction control engaged, sort of seems to fight the all-wheel drive on it and sort of spins wheels in a strange order and actually has some fair amount of slippage to it. Now, the Jeep actually has another button that has a picture of a Jeep on a hill. I tried using this button in various different situations, and it never really did anything, nor did I figure out what it's for. The gauge cluster is easy to read day or night. The entertainment system's intuitive, but there's nowhere to rest your hand, and seeing as it's a touch screen, you end up hitting a lot of the wrong buttons. I did like how the GPS on it does let you put in waypoints and markers that are off of the actual roads, which is a useful feature for a Jeep. We'll run this on dirt, gravel, mud, and pavement. Why don't we throw in a little bit of snow? Now, this Jeep's as sure-footed as I would expect it to be in snow, ice, and slushy conditions. Even when in two-wheel drive with the traction control disengaged, when it does start to step out, it is very predictable. Another thing these Jeeps are fairly well known for is their suspension flex. Now, while I did mount a couple of boulders here and there, didn't really make for great video, but even as we come across these large ruts here, you can see that the vehicle keeps all four wheels in contact with the ground as it's going through, and that's what you want it to do. Another perk of the Jeep design is it has fairly decent approach and departure angles. I was able to mount hills with this Jeep that I wouldn't be able to do with my 3/4 ton truck without scraping. I've been having a little too much fun with this, so we should probably take a look under the hood and see what's inside. The Jeep's powered by a 3.6-liter Pentastar gasoline engine, delivering 285 horsepower and 260 foot-pounds of torque. The problem is it delivers it at the high end, which isn't where you need it in a Jeep. Now, the wagon-style Jeeps have enough room in the cargo compartment to get a bike and some gear in there without actually intruding into the rear passenger compartment. Jeep has made vast improvements over the last 5 to 10 years with their interiors. This Jeep is pretty much completely trimmed off on the inside. It's plastic and vinyl, but at least it looks finished. That's with the exception of the hardtop, of which I didn't even try to take off because we're in late November when I'm filming this, and taking that hardtop off would have pretty much guaranteed some rain or snow. Now, I was fairly impressed with this Jeep until I started looking at the price tags. This Jeep is tested was in excess of 52,000 Canadian, and that runs about 43,000 in the US. For that price point, you can get yourself a relatively well-equipped half-ton pickup that has more power, a more comfortable interior, it's quieter, and a much heavier towing capacity. Another downfall to the Jeep is that it has a relatively low capacity for towing, and it comes in at 3,500 pounds, which is roughly a 24-foot bow rider loaded with fuel on its trailer. Guys, we'll wrap things up with some specs for you. The vehicle has a curb weight of 4,277 pounds. It has a ground clearance of 9.5 inches. Its height is 72.6 inches. Its length is 184.9 inches. With a maximum internal payload of 1,000 pounds. The wheelbase is 116 inches, and it has a width of 73.7 inches. Finally, it's got a turning circle of 40.8 feet. Guys, as always, I appreciate you stopping by and checking out the channel, and until next time.